My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. Ezekiel 115-21 describes wheels within wheels that were associated with living creatures. Was Ezekiel's vision of the angelic realm or something else? Something extraterrestrial? My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, Michael James Walker, had an encounter when he was 12 that changed his life and planted future visions similar to Ezekiel's. Mike is a UFO paranormal experiencer and has passionately been studying the phenomenon since that first sighting. Michael had a brief appearance on Travel Channel's UFO Witness and has been involved in an upcoming documentary called Experiencer, as well as numerous guest appearances on multiple paranormal radio podcast shows. He joins me this week to share his path and contact experiences. Please join me in welcoming to Destination Unlimited, Mike Walker. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Victor. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And just so the audience knows, you and I connected on Facebook, and there was a question about what type of craft would we like to see if we had the experience of seeing the craft. And I put down Ezekiel's wheel, and you responded, I actually saw Ezekiel's wheel.
Yeah.
And that started our connection. So we're going to talk about that during the course of this interview. So first, please share with us what happened in 1985 when you were 12 that opened your consciousness and your awareness of contact.
Okay. Very well. Yeah. I was living in South Hayward, California, right across the street from my original grandfather's home, where we as a family had it for ourselves after he passed away for a brief moment before we had to end up selling it. But the family across the street from us, the Lopez family, they pretty much took us in. And that's where I was living at the time. So here I go. I stepped off the porch from 28063 East 11th Street. I stepped off the porch. I just remember opening up the metal screen door and walking out into the middle of the street. And I bumped into my friend Chano Gerardo. It was just kind of random. In retrospect, there wasn't much conversation that we had, but there was an understanding that it was time to take a walk around the block. And so that's what we did. And it had just turned dark. I remember the sky was really pretty. I remember that the clouds were pretty low that night, and they were lit up pretty well from the moon. I understood that. So as we started to make our walk around the block, before we even started headed towards our first turn, I was taking focus to the sky because, like I said, it was really pretty out, and the clouds were pretty low, and they appeared to be moving fast. But I understood that the reason why they were moving so fast was because they were so low. I just thought it was pretty neat. And then all of a sudden, a portion of the clouds began to spiral. And I had a couple of thoughts that ran through my mind before I blacked out. And these thoughts were, are these clouds really starting to swirl? Because it was a small, calculated swirl. It wasn't like a natural phenomenon, funnel or anything like that. It was a clean, crisp, small little spiral in the clouds. And these thoughts went through my head before I blacked out. The first one was, like I said, wow, are those beginning to spiral? And then my next thought was, oh my God, it is spiraling fast, because it was a small little spiral that got bigger and bigger, and it got faster and faster, real fast. And I completely blacked out. And my next conscious moment, Victor, I was no longer standing where I was. I was about a half a block further down the road, around that corner that we never even made, past a little park. And now I am standing directly below a UFO, a flying disc. And I knew what it was right away. Um, I remember standing there like a soldier with my arms to my side and my head looking straight up. I was looking at the belly of this craft. And as I was looking at this belly of the craft, I realized that I couldn't move. But at the time, I chalked it up to, yeah, because I didn't want to miss a moment. You know, I heard of these things before, and from what I gather, they don't last very long. So I just thought that I was just putting on an extra focus. And I seen this blue light illuminating underneath the craft, and it was like a sporadic flash, and it would flash all over the place. And as it flashed, it would illuminate certain sections of the belly. And from what could see, I seen a lot of electrical tubing. I describe it as C-3PO's stomach in Star Wars is the only thing that I could possibly compare it to. It was just really integral. And what I remember thinking in my head, because I knew what this was, I was thinking in my head, wow, if this is a UFO with advanced technology, why does it seem to have some kind of electrical problem right now? It looked like it was having some kind of issue with this blue light that was just kind of zapping all over the belly. It kind of, it looked sloppy to me. And as soon as I thought that, it snapped out of whatever electrical funk that I was thinking it was in, and it put an all-out, multicolored, beautiful light show. I'm talking lights from the perimeter of the craft, multicolored, that would move towards the center, the core. It would go clockwise, counterclockwise. Everything seemed balanced and coordinated, and it got these sequences of multicolored lights that it was displaying got faster and faster and faster. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, now they're showing off, you know? And I really feel like there was a mental communication going on. And I had the feeling that there was nothing for me to hide. They understood and knew everything about me. I felt naked in a sense when I was standing there looking at this thing. And so the light show eventually stopped. It was probably 15, 20, 30 seconds. I remember thinking all kinds of things when I was looking at the lights going. It was like, remember that game Victor Simon Says with the
Yes.
lights? Well, it kind of reminded me of that, but at some super high level that you can't even comprehend. That's how fast these lights were blinking on and off. And yeah, so I remember thinking, wow, no one's going to believe this. And after the light show stopped, the craft kind of pulled ahead of us a little bit to where now I can see the craft as a whole, and it was indeed a saucer-shaped craft. I'm no longer looking at just the belly. I'm looking at the entire craft as a whole, and it was just in front of us a little bit, and it seemed to do just a little bit of a wobble, and it took off like near the speed of light towards the Hayward Hills and went east. And when that thing took off and it displayed that speed to me, it was like a whole nother, it just blew me away on a whole nother level. It was almost comical how fast that it moved. If I would have blinked my eyes, I feel that I would have thought maybe it had just disappeared or something, but I seen it. And it went, east towards the Hayward Hills so fast. It was like a cartoon. It was almost like, yeah, right. So I noticed I was able to move after it left. And the first thing I did was I turned my head to the left, because that was the last place Chano was at. He was on my left. And sure enough, he was there. The first words out of my mouth were, "Hey, that was a UFO, huh?" And Chano's response to me was, "Yeah." So that really blew me away right away. I could tell that he did not want to talk about it. And it was just so strange. And the rest of the walk around the block was quiet. I wanted to talk about what we seen, but Chano didn't. Uh, as we started ending our walk around the block, we're now in front of Chano's house, and Chano had an older brother named Peter, and Peter had some friends over, and they were hanging out in front of the house. And I was ready to share my experience I just had, because obviously Chano really didn't think much of it. And I started sharing this experience, and the kids kind of played with me for a minute and said, "Oh yeah, we seen it too. It went that way." And they had me going for a minute there, because they pointed towards the direction that I seen the craft go. But then I quickly realized, after a couple of giggles, that they were just playing around and messing with me. So I just kind of put my head down, and I went back into the Lopez family's home where I was living. There was a couple people home at the time, and I remember trying to share it with them, but it just wasn't something that they were ready to listen to. And plus I was kind of a class clown, so that never really worked towards my, it didn't really work for me at all, being kind of a class clown. Yeah.
Summing up the entire experience in retrospect, you talked about feeling communication. You talked about the beautiful show, the light show. How did this make you feel?
I just remember thinking no one's going to believe it. And like I said, that they were showing off. They were showing me that there was no electrical problem at all. As a matter of fact, everything was fine. I didn't really get any kind of message other than that at the time. I was really confused. I would share my story with everybody about the saucer, but I would always leave out the clouds creating like a vortex. I always left that out, because I've never heard of something like that, and I know no one else has heard of anything like that. But I know that people have heard of UFOs, so I would just stick with the UFO. And my story changed slightly from time to time. It was the most confusing part of my experience that I didn't even start to get a real grasp on until about 3 years ago, really. That's when I realized it was more than just a sighting. I mean, this thing was close too. It was probably about 150 feet above the nearest telephone pole. But yeah, I didn't have much feelings other than the thoughts that ran through my head initially. And I think I let it go for quite a while. But there was a lot of dreams that I had soon after this experience.
And we're gonna get to those in a minute, but I want to talk more about the response that others had, especially your family,
yeah.
when you tried to share what happened. What was their response?
Well, my mom gave me the whole, I believe that that's what you believe you've seen. The Lopez family didn't believe it at all. Going through school, it was junior high. It was my first year of junior high. I couldn't wait to share it with my friends. A lot of them didn't believe me. And like I said, I was kind of a class clown. But then when I would tell them that Chano was with me, that kind of bent their ear a little bit more, and we would go and track down Chano, and I would say, "Hey Chano, can you let these guys know, about our experience with the UFO?" And Chano would say, "Man, Mike, you're still talking about that?" And I would say, "Yes, I'm talking about that. I think I'll be talking about this the rest of my life. Can I at least get a yes or a no?" And he would go, "Yeah." And it just wasn't enough. It wasn't enough validation. And it wasn't enough to convince my friends. So I pretty much got jaded, Victor, and I left it alone for quite a while.
My first conscious experience took place when I was 5 years old in 1958. And when I would share this with my parents, I was told that I was imagining things. Before my mother passed in 2020, I had a conversation with her in which she admitted she had an experience when I was about a year old, which I will always be grateful for. Did anyone else in your family share any experience with you?
Yes. Actually, I had asked my mom a long time ago, and she had mentioned that she had an experience up in the Hayward Hills with a couple of friends. They were having a little picnic, listening to some music, and all of a sudden the music stopped. Her friends stopped. Everything just seemed to cease for the moment, and all of a sudden, Jesus Christ appeared before her in his typical robe and the satch. And she said that there were some clouds that just covered his face just enough to where you couldn't see every detail of his face, but she knew who it was. And she said that he spoke to her without moving his mouth, and it was something that she heard in her head. And the question to her from him was, "Are you ready?" And she thought in her head, "Oh no, I'm not ready." And as soon as she thought that, the music went back on and her friends began to move and everything was back to normal again. And she did not share anything with them or anybody else. From what my mom told me, was I was the only one that she had told that to. And as I really started getting into the UFO phenomenon and learning that it could be a family thing, I never thought that that would be the same as mine, because mine was a UFO experience and my mom was more of a spiritual experience. But that's when things really started to mix together and I started tying things together. My experience became more biblical. Even though I wasn't into these things, it became more biblical. And I accepted the fact that my mom did have an experience. It wasn't exactly like mine, but later in life, I realized that it was a biblical experience that she had, which kind of goes hand in hand with what mine turned into eventually.
What would you say to parents of children who report these types of things to them?
Oh man, children don't have a filter and they're so close from the other side. They're not tainted or poisoned. I would believe anything that they say. I mean, they're speaking the truth. They really are. If they're going out of their way to say something like this, there's got to be something to it. You know,
Absolutely. Listen to your
I would
children.
support them.
Absolutely. Listen to your children. Anything that they share with you that is out of the ordinary, it's really important to listen to your kids. In retrospect, do you consider what happened an abduction or something else?
Well, Victor, I used to just it was only about 3 years ago when I finally came out of the so-called closet and became true to myself and just called it what it was. Um, it was more than a sighting. It was an abduction, and I used the word abduction because that was the only word out there that people were using. Um, they it was the blackout. It was the blackout from the vortex and the clouds that really made me think it was more than just a sighting, because I've blacked out before. I've blacked out before I was 12 years old. There was an experience that I had about 2 or 3 years prior to that, where I woke up and I see an entity in my bedroom, on my carpet, walking towards me, and I chalk that up to a residual spirit, some kind of ghost or something. But now, as an adult, I reflect, and now I think they had been taking me. I don't want to use the word abduction because it sounds against my will, and I don't have any negative thoughts or memories about these things other than being startled here and there. But yeah, I definitely believe I was taking. There's a lot of stuff that has been locked into my subconscious. I do realize that, but there's also some memories that have naturally surfaced. Um, so I do have memories of certain parts of the ship, of being on board this craft. I have memories of detailed areas that, from what I've learned, other experiencers have seen some of the things that I have seen inside this craft as well. So that's when I became real with myself and called it what it was. It wasn't it was an abduction. And to tell my wife something like this was a little too much for her. She knew that I had experienced a UFO, but to say that it was an abduction was too much for her. And it really broke my heart. So all I had left to do was just pray that maybe I can have an experience with her too one day, which eventually did happen.
And we'll save that for the next segment. But
Sure.
do you have a recollection of the beings, what they looked like, and how they treated you?
I don't have a recollection at all. I wasn't able to see these beings. Um, I know that they treated me well. They were showing me things without actually. I felt like they were standing next to me, but there was no way I could see them. I just remember kind of being guided, like on a tour, being shown different rooms. But I did not see any beings at the time at all, and I still haven't. So I don't exactly know what I'm dealing with, other than some of the recent experiences that I've had has led me towards more of a biblically accurate type of experience.
My guest is Mike Walker. Mike, please share with our listeners where they can find out more about you and your fascinating story.
Okay, yeah. I developed a page on Facebook called Ophanum Energy, OPHANIM Energy. It started off as just a arts and crafts. I created Oregon energy. I create pyramids with crystals and things like that. That's what the page started off as, but now it's kind of became my spiritual experiences and UFO experiences. It's turned into anything and everything that I want to share, or where people can reach out and get help. And I'm also it's just on Facebook. If you look up James Michael Walker, you will find me. I'm Michael James Walker. I use my father's name, James Michael Walker, for people to find me on Facebook. And then from there, you have an option to join my private group, UFO experiencers group that I have called UFO Paranormal California. So.
And we'll be back with more of Mike after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hi, this is Bill Maher. I can find humor in almost anything, but one thing I never laugh about is cruelty to animals. If you don't get the joke either, write People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, 501 Front Street, Norfolk, Virginia, 23510.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Mike Walker. Mike, following the 1985 experience, you had a series of visions, some of them biblical in nature. Please share these with us, including your vision of Ezekiel's wheel.
Okay. I'll save the wheel for last, but the one of the first visions I remember having was very short and sweet. I was running from a crashing flood, and I jumped up on these huge stones that I came to know as Stonehenge. And I jumped up on these stones for safety as the crashing flood came roaring behind me. And just at the last second before the flood took me away and swept me off my feet, I was able to jump up on these stones and get up onto the very top. And I was able to watch the water reach the very top of these stones. And it stopped right before it covered the tips of them. So it was like I didn't even get wet. that was one of my I called it just a dream for many years. But in retrospect, as a 12-year-old, I just felt like I didn't have any business dreaming of such events like that. My next one that I remember walking on a beach with my Aunt Cindy, holding her hands, and we're looking at this beach, and it's just full of whales, and they're all beached whales everywhere. I believe that they were dead. I did not smell anything. It was, everything about it was beautiful, except just the fact that these whales were no longer living. Now, the wheel within the wheel, that one really blew me away as I got older, because in retrospect, once again, I really felt I had no business, because I've never heard of anything like this until certain things in my life, certain movies and things like that would trigger more of a response to look into it and be forced to look into it and realize that there's something to it. But the dream that I had was I was standing at my grandfather Jack's house, the one that we had temporarily lived for a year or two before we had to move across the street to the Lopez family. In this dream, I'm standing on the carport of 28080 East 11th Street in South Hayward, California, and I am looking at two wheels that are hovering and spinning above the peak of my grandfather's home. It's an old, it was built in 1924, I believe. At the peak of the roof, I could see the wheel within this wheel. One wheel is going one way, the other wheel is going the other way, and it's just twirling and spinning, and it's hovering. And I remember thinking in my head, well, this ain't a UFO, because I know what UFOs look like. You know, they put on multicolored light shows. They look like a saucer, and they take off like the speed of light. To me, at the moment when I was dreaming this, it didn't really impress me, because it was just odd, you know, but it was hovering. It was defying gravity. So I tried to tell some of the people that were outside in the neighborhood about it, and I wanted to point it out to them. But unfortunately, in my dream, no one can hear me. No one can feel me, because I tapped on somebody's shoulder and I got no response. I just remember feeling sad that I couldn't share this experience that I'm seeing right here in front of my eyes. And that was the sum of it. And I really didn't think much of it for really a long time, and until I started seeing things like, I saw the movie Contact with Jodie Foster, and there was some deal in there where it was like the wheel within the wheel. It looked a lot like it to me, and it just really triggered me, and I got really emotional. And then eventually I ended up learning about Ezekiel's vision of this wheel within the wheel, and I just went from there. Like, there is something to this, Victor. You know, there has to be. So
absolutely. Absolutely. In your vision with Ezekiel's wheel, did you see eyes in the rings of the wheels?
I did not. I did not see the eyes. As a matter of fact, there was nothing shiny or bright or brilliant about it. I do remember that it did have kind of like a gunmetal color to it, kind of a dull color, but it was ominous. It was just so, the way it moved, it was so calculated and perfect. But I did not see any eyes. I understand that a lot of people do depict these eyes, but the message that I personally got was, you know, sometimes these eyes are actually just lights. In my case, anyway, which kind of goes hand in hand with one of my most recent experiences I had in 2022.
Why don't you tell us about that?
Okay, well, like I had said earlier, when I decided to share with my wife that I believe I was abducted, she thought that was a little too much, and I could tell in her eyes that she didn't believe that. She thought that maybe I had too much time on my hand to make this up. That wasn't the case. It really, I wanted to share this with, of course, I wanted to share this with my wife and have these passionate conversations with her, but I couldn't. So what I did was I prayed. I prayed that maybe we can have an experience together, and it was something that we can have in common and just move on from there. So I kind of forgot about the prayer that I asked for. It had been maybe a month or two, and we're outside our apartment when I was living in San Leandro, and all of a sudden I see this object coming. It's coming overhead. It's starting to come over our path, and I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of my wife and just jump to conclusions right away and go, honey, look, a UFO, because I've had Mylar balloons trigger me and throw me off for a moment or two, and I've embarrassed myself quite a bit sometimes. So I say, whoa, what kind of drone is this? Because as I'm looking at this object, it looks like it's rolling, flipping. I couldn't tell exactly what it was doing. It was hard to really lay an eye on it. There was a point where I even thought, is this thing shape-shifting? So here we are, me and my wife looking up at this object. It didn't appear out of nowhere. I seen it coming from a little ways. And as it approached us, it was now directly overhead. It seemed to slow its roll. It seemed to stop flipping and rolling. And now I see a pattern of lights that it illuminates from inside one of the rings. And these are circular, bright, white dots. It was dot, 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 dot. And then it looked like a beginning of another dot, just like the rest of them, but it wasn't. It was more of a line that ended with another dot, a side of a dot anyway. And the pattern of lights that it displayed to me, I remember thinking in the moment, because I did have somebody, a spiritual guru in a sense. Her name is Angel Thacker. She would always give me these these tips, like next time you have an experience, try to concentrate and ask what the message is. So I did. I remember seeing this pattern of lights, and I asked what the message was, and I see this pattern of lights, and I didn't know what it meant until I go upstairs into the room and I'm drawing pictures of it to share with my experiencer group. And I'm looking at these dots, and it looked to me a lot like Morse code. So I look up online what these series of dots and lines represent. And I was thinking, hey, maybe it's going to be a message, saying, hey, we are here, or take me to your leader, some message like that, and the message that I found was numerical. It was a numerical message. It was numbers. The number that they gave me was 444. And I did a little research, and of course, it is an angelic number. And this one in particular was telling me that, you're strong with the angels, you're on the right path, things are going to happen that you've been working for. Just trust in your family, trust in your angelic realm family. And it just made so much more sense to me. My wife saw what I drew, and she drew a couple of the lights, and she said, this is what I seen. She only seen 2 of those lights that lit up. She didn't see the entire message that I did. And it did open up my eyes, my wife's eyes a little bit more. And at least we were able to have a conversation about at least our experience. She's not going to go run and join a UFO group or ufology or anything like that. She still has her walls up in a sense, because it wasn't too dramatic of an experience, because it just continued to fly overhead. And I remember thinking, well, let me get my phone out. I knew that I wasn't going to get some amazing evidence. I knew that it had already passed me by, and that it would probably just come out like just a dot in the sky. And it was, I knew it would be nothing that I would want to share, because it would just be another light in the sky that somebody's being a little bit over dramatic about. But I wanted to take a picture, in a sense, to get the license plate of that car that just drove by, in a way, is what I was thinking. I just wanted a souvenir. And so I do. I have a video of it, and it's sure enough, it's not some mind-blowing evidence, but there is a point in the video where I know what it's doing, because I know it was flipping and rolling, and I see it. I see it doing exactly what it was doing, but it was just nothing big enough for me to, like, boom, here it is. This is the Ophanum. And as a matter of fact, I wasn't even thinking about the Ophanum, the wheel within the wheel. I believe we call it many names: the Merkabah, the Spirit's Chariot. There's many things that we may be calling this thing. Yeah, it's just, I know that's what it was, because my wife was telling me that when I was drawing pictures of it, she said that it reminded her of Saturn. And I go, what do you mean it reminded you of Saturn? And she said, well, it had the ring. And, as soon as she said a ring, then it really started ringing in my head. Like, oh my, I look over on my crystal grid where I have this energy table that I developed. And I have this wheel within the wheel that I created from Michael's Arts and Crafts, with crystals and circles of wood. And sure enough, there it is. It's in the middle of my energy table, the wheel within the wheel. And it clicked on me. This is what I'm asking for. This is what I had asked for. This is what the energy table's all about. This is what my prayers were all about. They answered my prayers. I went back outside again by myself, left my wife inside, and I went and sat down on the sidewalk, near the sidewalk in front of my apartment. And I hear an owl screech very close. And I look up, and there's two white, beautiful barn owls that screech overhead. And to me, that was a clarification that I got what I had prayed for. Each owl represented me, one represented my wife. It was just another little validation that my prayers were answered,
That's beautiful. Many contactees and abductees have a sense of being selected, at least the first time, for their experiences. Do you sense that you were selected?
I went through those emotions, Victor. More as a child, I felt that it was something special about me. But they were a roller coaster of emotional thoughts on that. And I went through a time where I thought maybe I was special. And then I went through a time that maybe I'm not. Maybe this, like they do this. I'm not the only person that they've taken and have experienced on. It's hundreds and thousands of people, if they know it or not. I think that we all have these powers that are in us. So to think that I'm special, it's like there's a part of me that's abrasive. I don't want to go around saying, hey, I'm special, because part of the message I get is it's inside all of us. It's just a matter of using it or losing it through the programming of just growing up, and I choose to use it. And the more that you use it, I think the more that it works better for you. I just believe that we have more senses than we're led to believe. But the world that we live in wants to call it ESP, which is extra central perception, and meaning if you have any senses other than sight, taste, sound, and things like that, it's considered extra. And when you start talking along them lines, you start getting people to think that you're kooky, or you're into witchcraft, or it just falls right into another program. To me, it seems like, anyway. In reality, I don't think I'm special at all. I did hear of experiencers not experiencing anything, out of the ordinary until after the UFO experience. Like maybe it activated something within them. So, I mean, that is a possibility. There was many things that had happened to me after my experience. When I was in the Navy, I was stationed in Pearl Harbor when I was 21. I remember waking up in my rack one morning, and instead of getting up, I just kind of closed my eyes, and I was going places, and I just couldn't believe the places that I was going. I was going to these random places, and I kept going into these weird places. I didn't know where I was. And every once in a while, somebody would see me and it would freak me out, and I would wake myself up. And then I would once again tell myself, no, that didn't just happen. There's no way that happened. Let me try it again. So I did it like 2 or 3 times. And Victor, I was able to go to places, very vivid places, just by closing my eyes. And I didn't know it at the time. And I've never even heard of the word remote viewing or astral projection or things like that. And I didn't think it had anything to do with my 12-year-old UFO experience. It was just something that really threw me for a loop, But in retrospect, I think those are some of the things that I was doing. I just didn't know how to put a handle on where I was going. So I would end up in these random places, sometimes scary.
And not about the feeling of being special or set aside or put, but you have come through your experiences and have opened up groups to welcome and help others. That's very special.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a two-way street there, because not only am I helping others, but they're helping me at the same time through validations. And I really don't think, Victor, this is something that we're going to absolutely figure out, this lifetime. It might take many lifetimes just to get a grasp on what's going on here is amazing. Some people just want to leave it alone. Cognitive dissonance. They're happy right where they're at. They don't want to go that route. It's just, there's that word again. It's just too much. When I know that it's too real.
Yeah, absolutely. My guest is Mike Walker. We'll be back with more after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Mike Walker. Mike, you share that you've been monitored by orbs that you've captured images of. What is this like, and why do you think they're monitoring you?
Okay. Yeah, Victor, I love the television show Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters and things like that. And, I was never really a big fan of these orbs that everyone was talking about. And I think it had part to do with, because my experience was so dramatic. My initial, what I thought was my first experience of the UFO, the vortex in the clouds, being displaced from one area to another without recollection, that was really dramatic. So for me to really go nuts over orbs and things like that just wasn't something that I was into until I had a fellow experiencer named Marisol Smiley. She had these experiences with not only orbs, but squares and things like that, cubes. And I politely didn't want her to fall down like a wrong path. That's something I'm always afraid of, is falling for something that's not true, falling down an incorrect path. It's really got to be real for me. And what I did was I offered her a little pixelation explanation, is what I explained it. And I politely offered her some advice on, if I go out on my balcony right now, Marisol, with my phone and just take a random shot of anything, if I zoom in on it enough, it becomes pixelated. And that's why maybe you're starting to see these cubes. So that's what I did, Victor. I went out into the balcony and I took a random picture of the sky. I had the telephone poles and the lines and trees, and it was just a normal day. I took the picture and I went to zoom in on anything that I wanted to. It didn't matter what I was going to find on this picture. I was going to zoom in and zoom in enough to show her the pixelations that start to happen once you start getting too close. And before I even started zooming in, I noticed a little black dot just hovering over one of the phone lines. And I started zooming in on it. And sure enough, here I am now offering my friend Marisol a pixelation explanation for some of the things she's experiencing. And here I am now experiencing a black circle. And soon after that, it didn't matter where I was at. And it seemed to happen when I had a lot of people around me. Like I had my neighbor and we're having a barbecue. And my neighbor is a doubting Thomas. This is something I do not share my experiences with him. I knew better. I knew where he stood on a lot of this stuff. But he himself told me, "Hey, Mike, what's that white light up in the sky there? It just seems to be hovering right above us." And once again, I didn't want to embarrass myself. And I go, "Oh, I'm kind of playing it off like, oh yeah, I guess I do see it. Let me get my phone out." Just kind of nonchalant started recording it. And it stood there for quite a while, and it moved from one section of the sky to the other. Or I would be at work, working on a roof at a mall in Newark. At a mall called New Park Mall. I'm up there working on air conditioners and things like that. And I take a picture of this skylight. It's a really pretty skylight that was on the roof that reminded me of a pyramid. It was like a glass pyramid. It was really pretty. So I took a picture of this skylight. And right before I took the picture, I noticed a flash of light in my peripheral vision. But I just ignored it and chalked it up to whatever. I didn't think it was anything. I snapped the picture. I look at the picture and I see this white, perfect circular orb just above the skylight, a little bit to the left of the skylight, actually. And I realized this was the flash of light that I had seen in my peripheral before I snapped the shot. As I see it live, it appeared to be a flashing, moving light. In the picture, in the picture, the spectrum of a picture that I took with my phone, it was an orb. So yeah, I'm a firm believer in these orbs. I believe that they just monitor. They're curious. Like I have a sense of this being a futuristic reality show. Like if you look at our reality shows and things like that, if you fast forward where we're at now with reality shows and things like that, there really isn't nothing left but to create your own worlds and to keep an eye on these worlds is kind of what I gather. So I believe there's a lot of monitoring going on with these orbs.
I'm glad you clarified that, because Marisol is also a friend of mine. And I'm sure she's going to be listening to the show. So
I
I'm
hope
glad
so.
you shared that and clarified that. Do you sense a connection between the angelic realm and extraterrestrials?
I'm almost forced to at this point, Victor. I have mixed thoughts about it though. None of my experiences were bad, but there is a lot of stuff that has been locked away in my subconscious. The message that I got was they're all one and the same. And if you think about it, if you put yourself back in history, anything that comes from the sky, is something that I believe you're going to line yourself up with. Any message, of course, angel means messenger, right? It's any message that comes from the sky, you're almost forced to almost worship it. You know what I mean? Like this person's got everything figured out. I want to line myself up with the message and this person that gave me this message. And I can see down the line how it could be something that turns religious. And I believe at one point religion probably was right on track and it was true. But of course, just like anything else good in this world, it gets hijacked. There's different agendas that are going on and different programs that I'm learning about. And I really feel that you just got to stay firm and strong and know that there's more to life than what's in front of us, you know?
And Ophanim is the name of an angel. Tell us about Ophanim energy and your message of hope and self-healing.
So Ophanim energy is just me using my creativity. At the same time, it's kind of like playing with your crystals and manipulating energy with good intentions and trying to line myself up with my higher self, and just to see what I can create. And orgone energy, you know, when you're using epoxy and resin and things like that, and you're putting crystals into it, you're forcing this energy of the crystal to shoot up towards the tip of this pyramid that I'm creating. And it just made sense, and it just felt right to create more than just orgone energy. I just, anything that came to my mind, I put my energy in it. And these items that I have, you know, I would sell. I went to UFO Con 2021 or 2023, I believe. UFO Con when it was in South San Francisco, and I got myself a table and I got to talk with other experiencers and I sold a lot of my stuff, and people were telling me that they really feel the energy, you know, of what I have to offer. And so I believe I'm offering tools of help and trying to other people, helping them reach their higher self as well, you know. And no one's walking around perfectly activated at all time. You know, I'm talking about our energy system, our chakras and things like that. It's just a practice. It's something to keep an eye on, to keep your heart on it, to practice and learn more and more. You know, I think it's really inside of us. The answer really is, and I didn't like hearing that when I was little, like it's all in your head, you know, you could do anything you want, it's all in you. I didn't want to hear that, you know. I really didn't feel like it was in me. But from what I learned, it's all in us. And this activation of our chakra system, our energy system, all that stuff is real, and it's tied to our pineal gland, and I believe these are the tools that I was using without knowing what I was doing. And I just want to learn more.
What message would you like our listeners to take away from your experiences and perhaps offer hope for us in a world that really needs hope?
I would say that you need to pay attention more to energies, frequencies, and vibrations, things like that. When you walk into a room and something doesn't feel right, or you walk into a room and it does feel right, trust your gut, trust your instinct, trust your intuition. I believe it. I trust it. It's gotten me this far, and I'm happy for where I'm at now. If I were to pass away tomorrow, I would be so happy and privileged to just have experienced what I have, because I realize most people don't get the opportunity to experience these things. I have been given this opportunity. I appreciate it on a whole nother level. And I believe, why me and not everybody? Because I believe I am also a messenger. I am also a prophet. I don't believe that messengers and prophets are walking around dressed as nuns or Moses. You don't have to, you know, walk through a desert with a robe on. I believe that this is the modern day angel. This is the modern day message. We have a lot of people on this planet, so they need a lot of help. And yeah, there's a lot of experiencers, and I think I'm just one experiencer out of thousands and thousands and thousands that are actually helping. They're doing it without really knowing what they're doing, and I believe that's the kind of track that I'm on right now. I just want to continue sharing my experience, to help others and to help myself. I need help. I need to be regressively hypnotized. I have pieces that are missing, but at the same time, I'm helping others and they're helping me. So until that perfect timing comes where I get regressed, I'm just going to keep pushing. I call it the paranormal push. I'm just going to keep pushing and sharing my experience. But trust your heart, trust your gut. These are the things that are important. Frequencies and vibrations, Victor.
The wisdom and experience of my guest, Mike Walker. Mike, one more time, please share with our listeners where they can find out more about you.
Okay. I just have a simple Facebook page. If you look up James Michael Walker, you should see my name pop up, Michael James Walker. I have a page called Ophanum Energy. It's spelt OPHANIM, and that's Ophanum Energy. And that's where you can find me. I used to have a Paranormal Fridays show. I used to have a memoirs of an experiencer show, which you can find if you Google these things, Paranormal Fridays, with Mike Walker and Angel Thacker. You will find these things. I'm not so active. This show is the first one I've done in almost a year, Victor. But yeah, these things are out there. And I'm always looking forward to somebody that's actually interested and serious about it. Thank you.
Mike, I'm grateful for you joining us and sharing your experiences, your whole story. And I can honestly say that today I found a new brother.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely.
And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor the Voice Furman. Have a wonderful week.